Hi everyone, welcome to this first edition of Yoga with Tim. We're just going to enjoy this beautiful day outside, at least I am right now, and that's why I'm on this kind of irregular platform, so to speak, but I'm okay with that. The weather's nice and I'm going to enjoy that, so that hopefully you can hear maybe the ocean in the background there and some birds and things singing. So if you're joining me for the first time, I'd like to invite you to sit up on something comfortable. Maybe you have a yoga block, or maybe you have some books, or even a pillow, or anything that can give your hips a little bit of height here. And we're just going to take a comfortable seat. And that can be, like I say, in this position or in various other seated positions. And throughout the practice, you'll notice that I offer numerous different, what I'll call bus stops for you to take. And so you'll have the availability to take this to your level and try some new things as well. So first we're just coming to a seat, and however that looks, that was one position. You can also sit on the block with your knees tucked like so. And then we're just going to shrug our shoulders on our back a few times and begin to soften through the eyes. You might see mine kind of squinting a little because the sun is out, which is totally fine. Good. And then coming to rest with our hands somewhere on our lap or just on our thighs where you feel comfortable. And then feeling into your sits bones and allowing your spine to lengthen up nice and tall. Feeling the sense of length all the way up the spine and even out the crown of your head. You might even feel the sense of pressing the head back and at the same time keeping the chin nice and level here. Good. And then if you haven't closed your eyes, go ahead and come into a space that feels comfortable for you. Maybe softened eyes, gazing at the floor, or closing your eyes. And we'll begin with a bit of a meditation. And today I thought it more important than ever to talk a little bit about self-care. So first, as we sit here, just noticing your breath without changing anything. Maybe feeling into how your body is seated, or perhaps you're laying on your mat at this point. Another option I hadn't given, but that's totally welcome. So just finding our way to begin our meditation, to begin our practice in stillness. And noticing our breath. And then beginning to consciously draw the inhale deep into the belly. And the exhale, slowly letting it go. And doing this comfortably, inhaling and exhaling through the nostrils the best you can. Beginning a steady count of 4 as you inhale, and then a slight pause, and then a count of 4 as you exhale, and then maybe a pause, and then adjusting that to your degree. So your mind will be concentrated on your breath and how that feels in your body. And continuing to sit up nice and tall here. And so in this day and age where we have so much uncertainty around us in the world, unprecedented time, I feel it's most important to talk about self-care and to even feel into that for myself personally. Self-care isn't something that's selfish, it's something that's self-full. So when we take care of ourselves, we have a fuller ability to really show up and be present for those surrounding us. So today we're going to play with these self-care practices, one of which is why you showed up on your mat today, wherever you're at watching this. and taking some deep breaths into your own self-care practices, having compassion for how that looks, how that feels. Probably a lot different than others that surround you. Good. And from there, we'll slowly begin to open through the eyes, ever so gently, beginning to allow the gaze to open. Yeah, and then awakening the hands, doing some shoulder shrugs, sliding the shoulders up towards the ears and then down the back, doing that a few times, and then taking kind of the opposite direction. And today, as part of our self-care practice, and noticing, because probably you're by yourself, that you can make some noises, you can make little grunts and groans that perhaps you don't otherwise, or when you're around others. So taking this time to really take care of yourself. Good. Sitting up nice and tall, and then beginning some little bits of cat-cow motions in your spine here. So beginning to tilt through the pelvic bowl, inhaling, the belly draws forward, and then exhaling, pressing the air out, rounding through the back. And then doing that a few more times, really opening up, rolling the shoulders on the back. Exhaling out. And perhaps this is when you really start to begin to come into your intuitive flow, which I encourage throughout this practice. You're deeply listening to yourself, wherever you need to be, doing what you need to do. Good. And then coming up to a neutral spine here. And then from our neutral spine, let's go ahead and bring our arms out to the sides, palms facing toward the sky, beginning to reach the arms up towards the sky. Seated Urdhva Hastasana, and then drawing the palms down the center towards the heart. And then perhaps closing your eyes once again, bowing towards your heart center. And if you have another intention that serves you, place that in between your palms now and in your heart. Take a deep inhale into that. And as you exhale, soften and allow your hands to come down by your sides. Good. And we'll do a couple more of those. Inhale, reaching up. Notice if the shoulders are coming up towards the ears, slide the shoulders down the back as you bring your hands through heart center. And one more time. Inhale, reaching up. Coming through heart center. Good. And then allowing your hands by your sides. And if you were seated cross-legged, now's a good time to change your seat. For me, I'm just going to change to cross-legged. So doing a little switch up as need be for yourself here. Good. And then finding ourselves seated nice and tall once again. And then we'll begin a little bit of side stretching. So as you're ready, beginning to place the left arm out to the left. Maybe you can reach down and touch the floor. You might need a yoga block here or another prop perhaps. Maybe you lean into it a little bit. And then we're going to reach the right arm up towards the sky, fingertips pointing up. And then begin to soften over towards your left side, allowing yourself to feel the stretch through the right side. Really feel your right hip seated in the prop, in the floor, in your block. And then experiment as you breathe with your neck. What feels best, looking up, maybe looking down, maybe moving a little bit through the arm. Good, and then after you've spent a few breaths here, we'll inhale and reach up through that right arm, kind of drawing ourselves back up through center, softening down. Good, and then inhaling, both arms up, coming through our heart center, releasing. And we'll take that to the opposite side, so finding your right arm out to the side, reaching the left arm up to the sky, checking in with your shoulder, noticing if the shoulder's up by the ear, slide it down the back. Good, and then beginning to start to lean to the right, soften the right ear towards the right shoulder. That's it. And then begin to reach and stretch through that left side. Deep inhales and exhales here. It's like the ocean waves playing with your neck, any adjustments you need. And then ultimately reaching up through those left fingertips to help bring yourself back up towards center. Good. And then do a couple of those shoulder shrugs again. Gonna move things around here a bit. Alright. And then from there, let's work our way down towards our mats and onto our backs for a little bit here. So you'll probably see me and hear me, hopefully. And got an interesting knot right in my back, so you'll see part of me as we do this. So we're just going to extend ourselves out on our mats. Feel a little mini Shavasana, lengthen out. And then just even close your eyes, take it all in. Deep belly breaths. Maybe you put one hand on the belly, one hand on the heart as you breathe here for a few moments. Allowing the parasympathetic nervous system to kind of take over so we can finally relax, even if just for a few moments. Good. And then as you're ready, we'll begin to draw the knees in towards the chest for a little bit of a roll around. Do what feels good here. Maybe rolling around on the sacrum, perhaps taking one knee in a circle one direction and then the other. Same thing, opposite leg. Maybe you take both knees on a little journey. Kind of a free-for-all. We'll do a lot of this intuitive type work, so I'll make offerings, and it's your job to kind of get into your body and into your breath and just move into what feels good, moving out of our mind and more into our heart center. Good. And then bringing the feet to the floor so that your hands can reach back and pretty much tickle the back of your ankles here. Good. And then finding yourself nice and comfortable on your mat. And we'll work through some hip undulations here. So as you inhale, moving the pelvis forward, tipping it forward. As you inhale, belly draws towards the sky. And as you exhale, tilting the pelvis back, pushing the air out of your belly, grounding through the lower back. Inhaling, tilting the pelvis forward. Exhaling, tilting the opposite direction. So you may notice that this is part of what you're doing as you do cat-cows. This is part of your regular practice. You may also notice that this movement is very finite in your body at first. So instead of trying to move the hips, just really feel into moving the pelvis through these pelvic tilts. Inhaling, tilting the pelvis forward. Exhaling, rocking it back. So a few more times with your breath. Closing your eyes to really feel into the movement here. Good. And then coming to a neutral spine, what feels like it's right in between those two movements here. And then if you have a yoga block, I would encourage you to grab it now. Or if you don't, you can also use a water bottle. And I'm going to place the prop, whatever that may be, in between my inner upper thighs here. So I have something to remind my thighs to give a little energy towards one another. Good. And then I'm going to reach my legs up towards the sky. So it can be without a prop or with a water bottle or whatever you have here. Good. And we're just going to flex through the feet. Palms can face up towards the sky here. Palms can be facing down to help ground you. Doing what feels best in your body. Flexing through the feet. Maybe the knees are bent a little here. So everyone has a little different place where they're at, and that's part of why we show up. Why we show up in community. Good. And then maybe flexing through the feet. Rolling through the ankles. You hear some snapping and popping like I usually do. Maybe that causes you to make some good noises. And again, no one's here to hear you except yourself, so relish in that. Good, and then allowing the feet to come back towards the floor. And then just taking a couple breaths, maybe placing one hand on the belly and one on the heart again. So just breathe. Good. And then we'll take this into Urdhva Prasarita Padasana. So what we're going to do is, at the same time, we're going to lift the feet up towards the sky, flexing through the feet, and we're also going to lift the arms up overhead, reaching over our head. And then as we exhale, bringing the feet back towards the floor, bending through the knees, kind of dangling the feet. Good, and we'll do that about 5 more times. Inhaling, reaching up, arms overhead. Exhale, dangling the feet, arms by your side. So a few more times with your breath. Good, and do your final round here. And then remove the block or the prop if you had one in between your legs. And bring your feet a little wider on the yoga mat so your knees can knock in towards center here. Allow your spine to decompress, your sacrum to kind of just decompress here. Maybe breathing into the belly real deep. Sighing out what doesn't serve you. Alright, and then we're going to take that a little step farther into a flowing bridge. So bringing the feet back by the bum so you can reach back and tickle your ankles here. And then we'll bring our arms into what I call robot arms. So you're pressing the backs of your arms into your mat. Your fingers can be flexed towards the sky here. And you may notice that allows you to really chuck your shoulders underneath you so you can feel into pressing into the back of the shoulder blades. Good, and then as you're ready, we'll begin to inhale the hips towards the sky. And you can hold in your bridge for a few breaths, or you can exhale and slowly undulate your hips back towards the floor. So picking your bus stop here, inhaling up, and exhaling, slowly allowing the hips to undulate down. Or maybe you inhale and stay up. Either way, as you're in your bridge, feel this sensation of that block being in between your thighs. The knees are pressing away from you. Belly button's pressing up towards the sky. Shoulders pressing into the floor. Good, and then exhaling, undulating down. Everybody now coming down for a little rest. Good. And maybe this time you come into Supta Baddha Konasana. Soles of the feet can come together. Knees can go wide here. And once again, hand on the belly or heart, or whatever else position the hands calls to you to just relax for a few breaths. Noticing how this self-care practice is working for you so far. Maybe you've been out of your head a little bit already and just into your body. Just notice how good that can feel. And if your knees are wide, we'll use the hands to help draw the knees back towards center here. And then drawing the knees in for a little hug in. Some of that rolling around on the sacrum if you need. Good. And then from there, a couple of choices. So you can rock and roll your way up, which is going to be really difficult for me because there's a big knot in my back right now. Or you can simply kind of roll to your side and allow yourself to come on up to a seat. Good. And then as we come to a seat, we're going to go ahead and come on over towards hands and knees. So I happen to have plenty of padding here with the grass and so forth, but If your knees are tender in any way, I encourage the use of a blanket here. So then we'll find the knees under the hips and hands on the mat. Fingers spread nice and wide here, like a cat kind of clawing at the mat. Yeah. And then just check in with your belly and notice if it's kind of sagging towards the ground or if you're pressing and rounding away. See if you can find that neutral position. And then think about pointing the eyes of the elbows forward. So this sensation of the eye of the elbow rolling more forward, that helps draw the head of the shoulder on the back. So notice what happens when I don't do that versus when I do. Good. So little subtleties to keep in mind here. And then coming to a tabletop position, and then beginning some cat-cows here. So inhaling, drawing the head and chest forward, dropping the belly, and then exhaling, pressing the mat away, rounding like a Halloween cat. And then beginning again, inhaling forward, drawing head and chest forward, exhaling, pressing the floor away, rounding. Good. And then continuing this movement, these simple cat-cows with your breath, or beginning to take this movement into an intuitive flow that could look very interesting, maybe very different than you've even tried before, which is what I like to do as often as possible. So let your body speak here. Keep breathing deep belly breaths. You can inhale forward, and then as you exhale, rounding the hips all the way back towards the heels even. And then taking the hips back towards the opposite heel for a little stretch, side stretch here. So whatever you're doing, we'll take a few more breaths, moving through this kind of intuitive cat-cow. Good. And then ultimately, let's bring ourselves into a child's pose to release the wrists. So knees can go wide here in your first child's pose, or knees can stay together. It's kind of your choice. Knees wide gives you a little more availability. This is also a really good place for a prop such as a block under your forehead. So sinking the hips back towards the heels, towards being the operative word here. They don't need to be there. And then allowing your hands to come out in front of you, softening through the shoulder blades. Maybe that yoga block or that prop is under your forehead. Allowing the third eye a little chance to feel some pressure here. Good. And then wherever you're at, softening through the shoulders, rolling through the wrists here. Allowing your wrist movement before we come back up on our wrists a little more. Breathing into softening in the lower back. And then gently walking your hands back towards your hips to come on up out of that. Walk ourselves back forward towards that tabletop once again. Good. And then once we've arrived, we're going to do a little bit of spinal balance here today. So finding your tabletop, find your neutral spine in between that cat-cow. And then we'll begin by just bringing the right foot back behind us. Mine's going back in the grass. And we're just going to keep the toes on the floor. Roll through the leg at first. Yeah. Feeling into that for just a bit here. Good. Feeling into the calf muscles, into the thigh. Maybe rolling onto the top sides of the toes. So just feeling into any tension you may have. Good. And then you can stay there, or you can begin to lift the leg, flexing through the foot. So legs lifted at hip height. Try to keep this right hip even with the left. Reaching out through that right foot. Good. And then just balancing here and breathing. Checking in with your core. Make sure you're engaged here. And you can stay there, or you can begin to reach the left arm forward and notice that the shoulder creeps up towards the ear. Draw the shoulder onto the back, reaching the hand out like you're going to shake someone's hand. So reaching out through your fingertips. Good. And then we'll exhale and slowly set those limbs towards the ground. Come through a cat-cow movement or two in between here. And then coming back to a neutral spine. Good. And then this time taking that to the opposite side. So left foot goes back, toes are on the floor. I'll move forward a little bit so you can see my leg a little better this time. So toes on the floor. Moving through the calf muscle. Rolling through the toes. Good. And then beginning to lift that hip towards, or that leg towards hip height. So checking in, noticing if it's a little cattywampus or if it's about even. Checking in with your belly, keeping the core engaged here. Staying nice and steady as you breathe, reaching out through the foot, flexing through the foot here. And then you might decide to reach that right arm forward, drawing the shoulder on the back once again. You're shaking someone's hand, thumbs pointing up towards the sky. And then exhaling, bringing those limbs back towards the floor. Good. And then once again, singing back towards a child's pose so that you can allow your wrists some chance to decompress here. So moving through the wrists. Taking some deep, deep belly breaths and maybe even expanding into the lower back here as you breathe. Good. Then from there, walking yourself forward, bringing yourself up towards tabletop once again. And from our tabletop, we'll start to work our way towards a downward dog, so Adho Mukha Svanasana. So tucking the toes here and beginning to press the hips towards the sky. So think bent knees a lot, especially at first. And then same thing with the shoulders. Roll the eyes of the elbows forward so the shoulders feel like they're tucking onto the back. And then really press the hips towards the sky here. And then begin to dangle the head a little bit. Maybe you bend even more through one knee and then the other. And just breathing. Good. And then from there, we're going to walk forward towards a forward fold. So walking your feet forward towards your hands and then just allowing your spine to really decompress here. So I encourage bent knees a lot to allow your torso to just kind of flop over the thighs. And then you might grasp opposite elbows here. Do a little nod back and forth, left and right. Yes and no. Yeah, see how much tension you can let go from your neck. Good, and then ultimately bringing the hands towards the floor, we'll lift to a halfway lift, Ardha Uttanasana. Lengthen out through the spine here, and then exhale, folding in. 2 more times with your breath. Inhale, halfway lift. Lengthen, hands can be on the shins to help you here. Exhale, folding in. Once more, inhale, halfway lift. Exhale, fold in. Good. And then from here, go ahead and start to keep both knees bent a little bit. We'll bend even more through the right knee and start to bring the right hand over towards the left ankle. And then start straightening through that left knee. So feeling the stretch all along perhaps the IT band here. Breathing into this side of the hips. Deep belly breaths here. Good, and then softening that leg and then taking that to the opposite side. So left hand comes over to the right ankle and then left knee bends even more as the right straightens. The right hand can come to the hips to help feel, and you can just relax, breathe into the stretch here. Good, and then softening back towards your forward fold. And then coming up towards standing, we'll roll ourselves up, taking a couple breaths to get there. So as you're ready, begin to inhale and unfurl your spine one vertebrae at a time. Good, and then as you reach the top, we'll shrug the shoulders on the back a couple times. Good. And then just finding your feet underneath you. Noticing yourself on your mat. And we'll come into a few standing postures here. So a little bit of stuff to warm it up, because I'm getting a little chilly here too. So breathing into this, hands on the hips. Find your mountain pose, Tadasana. So both feet underneath the hips. Lift and spread the toes, place them down on the mat. Think of spinning the inner thighs inward and towards behind you. Good, and then shoulders on the back, length through the neck. Tadasana, it's a bit of work to actually stand, feel yourself, feel your body, taking that all in. Good. And then on your next inhale, reaching up, Urdhva Hastasana, maybe even gazing up, exhaling through heart center. Hands by the sides. We'll do that 2 more times. Inhale, reach up. And once more. This time beginning to forward fold, so leading with the heart, folding from the hips. Uttanasana, forward fold. Knees as bent as you need here. Inhale, Ardha Uttanasana, halfway lift. Exhale, fold in. And then gently roll yourself up or come up with a strong spine. Urdhva Hastasana. And then back to Tadasana. And just for a couple breaths here. Good. And then feel into the tops of your toes. Notice any tension that might be there. Moving the feet a little bit here. Good. And then let's step wide on our mats and come into a wide stance. So nice wide position here. You might notice that when you bring your arms out to a T, your ankles are about underneath there if you were to have a plumb bob or a string under there. Good. And then starting today, I'm going to turn the left toes out, and I'm not mirroring you, so you're just going to have to pay attention or just do opposite sides. And then so really rooting into that right foot. So feeling the right foot, the side of the foot really rooted in your mat, and then turning the left toes out and find this heel to arch alignment here. Good. And then notice what's going on with your hips. Are your hips still pointed towards the small edge of your mat, and can you swing them open? So this is an open hip posture. We'll work towards Virabhadrasana 2. Good. And so finding your wide width stance, hands on the hips at first, checking in to keep the hips wide, and then begin to bend into that forward knee. So coming towards Virabhadrasana 2, if the forward knee comes over the ankle, then lengthen your stance here. I can even shorten mine a little bit. Good. And then so really pressing into that right foot, shooting energy out that left knee, and then you might bring the arms out to a T. I like to keep the hands facing up, palms facing up to help keep some shoulder tension down. So breathing into that, and then maybe gazing over the left fingertips here. So holding this position, feeling the rootedness, checking in with your breath. We'll stay for 2 more breaths. Notice if you can sink just a little deeper in your posture. Good, and then we'll bring the hands to the hips, gaze forward, straight and through that left knee, turn the toes in, and take that to the opposite side. So right toes turn out, heel to arch alignment, really rooting into that left foot, the outer arch there, as you start to bend in to that right knee. Checking your foundation the best you can here. Checking in with your hips so they're wide open. Good. Check that front knee to see if it's rolled in a bunch. Hopefully you can keep it rolled out so you can look down and see your big toe by your knee there. Good. And then bringing the arms out to a T once again. Finding your position of either palms up or perhaps spinning the palms down and still allowing the shoulders to stay soft on the back here. And then breathing, softening into your Virabhadrasana 2. So drawing everything towards center even as you're pressing out isometrically, drawing everything in. Good, and then we'll bring the hands to the hips, unbend through the knee, turn the toes in. And this is a really good place for a forward fold. So if you have a prop and you like to use that, this is probably a good place to have that out in front of you here. Good. And then just bring the hands to the hips here, and we'll just tuck the belly, so making sure you keep some energy in the core. And we're going to start to tip our hips and notice what's happening with your pelvis, so that pelvic tilting forward, allowing the heart to lead. And so maybe you just come down to your yoga block, so there's lots of length in the spine here and not a rounding in the spine. And so you can stay there. That's a really good place to be. So you can lengthen out and feel energy pressing the inner thighs behind you. Good. And then maybe you have availability to soften in a little deeper. So you keep allowing yourself to soften in to your degree, wherever that is. This could even be a place for a tripod headstand if that's part of your practice. So perhaps coming into a headstand, but wherever you're at, remembering to breathe deep. Notice sensation. Notice how well you're taking care of yourself right now. Good, and wherever you're at, if you're in a headstand, beginning to come on down. If you're in a little deeper, coming on up towards about a halfway lift, so you can really lengthen out once again. And then bring your hands to the hips as you inhale your torso on up. Good, and then go ahead and step the feet back together. Oh, and do a little dance here, shake it off, whatever you need to do. Woo. Into the hips there a bit. Good. And then from there, coming towards standing in Tadasana once again. So standing at the front of our mats or thereabouts. And I'll show you what Tadasana does with the hips here, and especially with a yoga block. So putting that yoga block in between our thighs and then allowing that motion of the yoga block to be pressed back. So I like to use this Pez dispenser analogy. Lots of people have seen me use this in class. And so we want that yoga block to go back. And a lot of what happens then is the bum sticks out a little. So you draw the tailbone down, draw the core in a little here. Lots of energy in the feet. Shoulders on the back, link through the spine, through the crown of the head. Tadasana. So it can be a lot of work just to stand. It's a really good practice to notice when you're standing in line or whatever you're waiting for. So if you had your block there, you can remove it. Good. So from there, we're going to go ahead and step the left foot back. So finding yourself in a stance here where you have two separate tracks, so that you're not on a balance beam, so that one foot is off to one side and the other's off, so your hips have some room. Good. And then the hips are facing the short edge of the mat this time, so eyes of the hips facing forward, so to speak. Good. And so really rooting into the left leg here, feeling a groundedness, feeling yourself pressing into those toes, and we'll begin to bend into that right knee towards Warrior One, Virabhadrasana 1. So keeping that knee right over the ankle. And notice if you come in so deep that your lower back is cramming here. So you really want that sensation once again of lengthening the tailbone, drawing the core in. Good, and you can stay there, Virabhadrasana 1, or you can start to lengthen the arms up towards the sky. So wherever you're at, shoulders are sliding down the back, energy shooting out the fingertips here, hips staying even. So right hip's pulling back here and left hip's coming forward to even things out. Good, and then we'll bring the hands hip back to the hips, straighten through the leg, step forward, move through the hips a little if you need, and then take that to the opposite side. So right foot steps back, find a little, about a 45-degree angle with your foot back there, and then really pressing through that right leg, evening out the hips towards the front of the mat, and then bending into the left knee this time. And once again, checking in with the tailbone here, the core, and then maybe bringing the arms up by the sides, reaching up, perhaps gazing up if it's not cramping your back. Warrior 1, Virabhadrasana 1. Lots of breath. Left hips drawing back, right hips coming forward here so they stay even. Good, and then hands back to the hips. Step yourself forward. And then just kind of shake it off once again. Good. And then we'll do a little bit of more wide-legged stuff, and I'm going to turn around at first so you can see. So coming into a bit of a goddess stance. So really sinking the hips here towards the ground. Same thing applies, drawing the tailbone down. You can sink down to your degree. Good. And then we're going to bring the arms out to the sides and bring them into this kind of stick 'em up position. And then we're going to just stay here and we're going to pulse for a few times. So as you inhale, we'll reach up. And exhale, draw the shoulders down the back. And do it some more. Inhaling up. Good, one more time. Good, and then you can kind of drop the arms and stay in your horse stance. I'll turn around so you can see where we can go from there. And then bring your hands on down towards your knees. And notice if this works for you, we'll start to drop one shoulder and leaning in, stretching into that right shoulder, breathing into the back. And then dip the left shoulder in. And do that once or twice more as you feel necessary. Good, and then once you've had all that, go ahead and step the feet back together here. And shake it out a little bit. And actually we'll step just wide enough so we can kind of shake a little bit of that stuff out of the hips. So just allowing yourself to stand up nice and tall, and then just allow the upper spine to begin to sway back and forth. Maybe the hands sway along with it here. Maybe they're gently tapping you on the back here. A little more self-care. Good. And then we'll bring that down to about 50%, so slowing it down. And then ultimately allowing this to just kind of fade out. Good. All right. And then I'm a big fan of a yoga ball or anything else as a prop to do a little self-massage here. So I'm going to do a little self-foot massage. I encourage you to find something to do that. You could even use your water bottle if that's what you have. So just moving into the feet, or maybe into another area in your body for a minute or so here. And just breathing and noticing tension where it may hide. Of course, you're welcome to lay down on your mat, roll around on the ball. If you're close to a wall, this is a really good place to have the ball against the wall. Move it around your sacrum. So we'll just keep exploring that for a few more seconds. And notice that it's even balancing as you're working on your ball here. Good. And then slowly allowing that to come to a standstill, placing your ball off to the side. Good. And then we'll come into a little balance here, so a short tree before we come back down to the mat and wind things down today. So beginning by just standing in Tadasana, feeling your breath here, lengthening through the spine. Good, and then bring the hands to the hips and start to bring the weight into that left leg. So really feel the right hip start to hike just a little bit here. Good, and don't hike it so much that the hip comes way up, but just notice. Good, and then you might just bring that right foot to a kickstand. So this could be your tree, your Vrikshasana today, or you might decide that you want to try more balance with the right foot on the left calf. So that's a great place to stay. You can also do this against a wall, of course. So if you need a little extra balance, I encourage that. And then finally, you can also take your foot up all the way to the inner thigh. So anywhere but the knee. Try not to place your foot on the opposite knee because your knee will not like that. Good. And then so once you've found your position for Vrikshasana for your tree, just taking in your breath, keep pushing the lifted foot into the standing leg. The standing leg just standing firmly on the ground, feeling the four corners of your foot, and then coming into your version of tree, maybe hands at heart, maybe reaching out, exploring the limbs, blowing in the breeze here a little bit today, maybe every day, and challenging yourself, reaching up, maybe closing the eyes, and if you fall out, it's all okay, and then eventually bringing your tree back towards center. And then we'll slowly come out the same way we got in. Good. Shake through the hips a little here. Still have one side to go. Notice if you're collecting tension in your jaw. This is a really big spot for me. So just be silly a little bit and check in there anytime you need to. Okay, good. Hips and jaw seem to be highly related with holding tension. And then we'll take that to the opposite side. So beginning by standing in Tadasana, and then bringing the weight into that right foot, and then finding where our tree will be today. Maybe it's the kickstand version, maybe you're against the wall, maybe it's the full version. So anywhere but the foot on the knee, once again, and then exploring your practice, where you would like to be, where can you take it? When you let go and just really drop in. So thanking yourself as you breathe here for this self-care time you've given yourself. Noticing how good it feels, even to balance, even through this challenge. Good. And then bringing your tree back towards center and eventually coming out. And shaking through the hips once again. Good. And then we'll go ahead and come down towards a squat. So if you have tight legs and you need a little something under the backs of your heels, I encourage you to roll up your mat or have a blanket or something tucked under the back of the heels here. This isn't going to do much for me, as you can see, but that's what you would do. And so then we'll just come on down towards a squat. So coming on down to your version. And you can also use a prop here. So sitting up on a block in your squat and just continuing to do what we need to do. Good. And so wherever you're at, allowing yourself some space, some time here. Pressing the elbows against the knees. Sitting up nice and tall, so lengthening through the spine. Good. And then coming on out of that. So either coming up so you can bring yourself down, removing any props from your mat here, and we'll work our way towards our back and eventually towards Shavasana here. So laying on down towards your back here. Good, and then maybe drawing the knees in towards the chest. That's where we started, rolling around a bit. You're lengthening up towards the sky through the feet. Good. And then bring the hands down by the sides here again. And bring the knees up at about a 45-degree or a 90-degree angle here. And then we'll start to do these kind of yogic bicycles. Just kind of moving through the feet and through the knees and hips, and then take them in the opposite direction. A little bit of core stuff before we come down to rest. Good. And then giving yourself one more squeeze. And then ultimately finishing with whatever you need for your practice. Maybe it's an inversion or a shoulder stand. Perhaps it's coming into Supta Baddha Konasana again. Maybe it's time for a gentle twist, so bringing one knee up and then twisting over towards the opposite side, lengthening out through the arm, and then taking that to the other side. Good. So just coming back to our final rest now into Shavasana, and I encourage you to take as long as you need here. And I'm going to bring this to a close as my batteries are about to die. But I want to thank you all for joining me so much, and stay in Shavasana for as long as you possibly can. And I hope to see you again soon. I really enjoy instructing, and I miss seeing you all in person, and looking forward to having you back again soon. Take good care of yourself, and thanks for joining me in this self-care practice. Namaste.